most important question is, what do we want our students to do with the information they learn in our class? Our assignments should not ask students to simply restate content. They should be opportunities for students to grow in skills and abilities that will prepare them to do something with what they've learned, either some wonderful capstone thing that you have in your class or some wonderful things that they will do later in future classes with that content. So in Small Teaching Online, Flower Darby used the imagery of a road trip. So she describes courses and course planning like planning a trip. So in that language, your assignments and assessment are part of where we all learn if we have arrived, right? Did we get where we think we have? So we're going to begin by talking about formative and summative assessments, then about the benefits of small stake assessments, and I'll talk more about that in a few. Remind ourselves that everything we do should be transparent. Our students should know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And finally, I hope at the end to convince you to create some sort of final wicked assessment. And remember, when I say wicked, I mean, you know, where it really gives the students a lot of authority. They're applying it to their lives, to the world, to the future, working in the context of uncertainty. So let's talk a little bit about type of assessment. And when I say that assessment and assignments are how we assess student learning. So that's what I'm talking about. So we're going to start with this formative and summative. And students need both, right? Formative assessments are where they can learn and memorize and practice the new content and skills. These are really, really important. But are they most important in your class, or are they the stepping stones to greater learning? If they're the stepping stones, then you might want to consider lowering the stakes for these and limiting the synchronous time you spend on them. Okay, and I'm going to come back and talk about that in a bit. Summative assessments should be the exciting stuff, right? This is where they put the content that they showed they know from the formative assessments into use and they do something with it. This is where they begin to attain the bigger course goals, right? And they start to show you what they know. In particular for online assessments, you have to be really straightforward. So when you're thinking about your content and what they need to learn, and if there is some straightforward content, you can do that asynchronously, right? You can post YouTube videos, your own videos, your notes, your readings, etc., on your learning management system. And they can do that before class in the same way that you have them do the readings before they come to class, right? You can even, if you want to be sure that they've done that and that they're gaining those skills, you can set up a Sakai quiz, or you could do a Kahoot challenge, or you can task them to create a Quizlet or a game or something that they can play with each other to ensure that they get that content, right? But then save your synchronous time. Your synchronous time is really, really special. You only have so much time with them. And save that for when you're working together, when they're in groups or they're working with you, and you really want to enhance those bigger learning outcomes. The synchronous time should be when they apply, integrate, and create, right? This is when you do want to put them in groups so they can build some community, even though they're online, okay? And as Jessica described yesterday, we know that community and collaboration is really, really important online. So think about your synchronous time and how you're structuring that. Maybe don't use that just for the lecture, the content. Put that somewhere that they can access it separately and really engage in that all-important collaborative and community type stuff when you're together. When Jessica talked about you need repeated communication when we're online, I want to emphasize repeated, regular, over communicate with them. It is really easy for students to get lost and disconnected when online. So we need to create ways for our students to engage with the material and with us regularly. So small stakes assessment is actually a good way to do this. If you're the kind of course where they don't have anything until a midterm paper, that's a really long time for them to not necessarily engage in the same way. And they're not there and you're not checking in with them. So having some small things that are formative, things that they can do along the way, small stakes things that show you they're working towards the course goals, but they also show you who's engaged and who's not. So for example, last semester, I had a couple students who had real trauma with all that was going on, and they disappeared. But because I had regular small stake, they needed to make comments on readings. If a student missed one, I didn't worry, but if you miss a couple in a row, then I'm going to check in. And I was able to check in and say, how are you doing? And I found out her grandmother had just died of COVID. Okay, how do we deal with that? But she didn't let me know. It's because I had these assessments and I could see her engagement. So some ways for you to think about these engagements are discussion forums, which I know that we're going to learn more about tomorrow. Group note-taking, so you can have a Sakai or a Google Doc or any of those sorts of things where they're putting something there. You can have online quizzes or Quizlets and Kahoots of your memorized material or the vocabulary of your course. You could even have them do certain things for beginning level reading. It would be great if you had some sort of connection and small formative assessment for every class period, but that might seem like a lot to you. So maybe every week. But if you make these short, straightforward, quick things that are just part of their preparation, just as you would have them do in purpose, you have them when we're in person, you have them read, right? And I want to tell you, you don't have to grade all of these. So when you're feeling like overwhelmed, gosh, I don't want to add this much more, I've got so much going on. Yeah, well, these small stakes assessments, you can use your learning management system for quizzes and they grade automatically. You can have particular, like a Google Doc where you just look to see, did they participate? You don't have to look and judge the participation. I would suggest providing some incentive. And I say this because just like us, our students are really busy. And often they will choose to put their time in the course that's making them turn stuff in. I know some of my colleagues get frustrated because they're like, you chemistry people with your problem sets every week, our students always working on that instead of doing my reading, right? So think about what those might be, some incentives. So you could have some small amount of points or participation for, you complete a certain percentage of these formative assessments, and that's great. That's what you're looking for. It could be that you just give shout outs, right? Like I was explaining to somebody yesterday, I do something weird in person that I'm trying to do online, which is I have these little certificates that are like what teachers give kids in first grade, and my students love them. And so based on Monday's class, on Wednesday, I'll come in and say, today's award goes to so-and-so for their really insightful conversation about this, or because I know that it was really hard for them to raise their hand on that really complicated problem and they got us started. They love that, okay? So there's all sorts of ways we can do this, but recognizing that they're busy, so make sure that the work you're doing, that you're asking them to do, is building towards a goal, that you're transparent and they know it's building towards a goal, so they know why they're doing it, and perhaps have it count in some way. So when they're trying to decide, I only have this much time, which thing will I put my time to? Let's talk again about transparency. I told you we'd keep coming back to this. Your students really do need a map to successfully navigate your course and your assignments. They need a why, a how, and the details, and they want to know how it's going to be graded, okay? So providing transparency does not decrease rigor. I know that's one of our greatest concerns is like, oh, but then they're not going to know and it's making it too easy for them. It really isn't. Transparency actually enables you to ask more of them because you can say, this is why, this is the purpose. So say, perhaps I say homework. This is where you're practicing those problem solving skills and getting the tools we need to work towards the more difficult problems, the summative things that we're coming to. They need to know the how. How will you do this? Like for my homework, it's you got to learn to use sapling, but then maybe you need to do some of the practice problems that I give from lecture where they're worked out and make sure it's clear, and then work on your homework, and then be willing to try again based on the hints. The scaffolding maybe is the hints, or the scaffolding is the assignments that you do that build up. Right? So I might have a problem set, I have a lab, then I have a cool assignment that integrates those things, okay? By doing that, I have prepared them to be able to do those bigger things because I brought them there, and they know, even if they're like, homework's boring, they know the purpose of it is to develop those skills. I call it the practice zone, right? That we do the practice zone, and I try to, if you're a musician or an athlete, you have to practice. Sometimes it's boring, but you have to practice to get good at stuff. If you give them the low stakes and you assess that, then you know when they're ready to go to the next level. And that's why I say this will actually help you with your rigor, because if you are transparent and you help them get those skills, then you can ask more of them. You can ask them to do something bigger. You can ask them to apply, integrate, create. And if I have transparent expectations, they know how they're doing, so they're ready for those things. Purpose, task, and criteria. So I said I was going to give you a template. When faculty make the purpose, the tasks, the how, and the criteria clear, students do better. There's plenty of research about this. But often people go, well, I don't know how, like, how do I do that in a transparent way? So this template, which now you have these slides already, this template is very helpful. I won't spend time on it because we're running out of time, but it basically gives you a template to put your assignment into. You can obviously not use that, but it defines the purpose. It kind of shows you how to tell your students, like, these are the skills you're going to gain. This is the knowledge you're going to gain. Here's how you're going to do it. And they even give you a list of question cues that help. And here's the criteria for success. So it helps you think through that. And then it shows you the unwritten rules. This is what students, so you could give this to your students. This is what students want to know. Before you begin working on an assignment, ask the instructor to help you understand the following. So the students should be able to ask you, what is the purpose? And they're defined here. What is the task? What is the criteria? So these are the things that you should be answering in that assignment.